what I've been doing is not working, and I cannot sustain this like this any longer.
Your body has been speaking to you your entire life, and learning how to listen changes everything. This is the Underlying Answers podcast. It's time to restore the design. Today, we're diving into a conversation that will resonate with anyone who has ever found themselves overwhelmed, exhausted, or trying to hold it all together while navigating life's biggest challenges. We'll be exploring what happens to the nervous system under chronic stress, how we move from survival mode into grounded leadership, and why true resilience isn't about pushing harder, it's about learning how to work with your body instead of against it. We'll talk about practical tools for staying regulated during emotionally charged situations, caregiving situations. We're going to talk about the connection between advocacy and self awareness and what it means to care for yourself in ways that actually work in real life, not just in ideal circumstances. Joining us for this wonderful conversation is Rebe Goebel, and pronounced, I almost did it wrong, Debbie with an R. So Rebe is a former Air Force officer, corporate contract negotiator, trauma-informed somatic healer, and the author of Lanterns in the Dark. Through her work at Freya's Haven, she helps parents of special needs and neurodivergent children move from survival mode into grounded leadership by combining practical advocacy strategies with nervous system resilience. As a mother of two neurodivergent teens herself, Rebe brings both professional expertise and lived experience into her work. She teaches parents how to use somatic manual overrides to stay poised under pressure during everything from intense IEP meetings to everyday family meltdowns. Her philosophy is simple: self care has to be practical enough to work in the Target parking lot, not just in the retreat. I love that. Please join me in welcoming Rebe Goebel to the Underlying Answers podcast. I'm so excited, Rebe, for this conversation. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here.
Yay. There's so much to talk about. So I want to start by just asking you first, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get into this work? Because we're going to dive into the fact that you are so grounded in, coming from the service, right? And
Yep.
grounded in everyday practical life. And you've incorporated your spiritual path and spirituality into your systems. And so I just would like to kind of hear, how did that evolve for you? And then we can
Yeah.
dive into some other questions.
You know, it's been one of those, I don't know if it was like a up and then down again, down and then up again, or whether we want to, it's a full circle moment.
Yeah.
But I, um, again, started my career doing contract negotiations for the Air Force, and then it translated beautifully when I left the service to working for some of the biggest corporations here in the United States. And I was really surprised in my primary focus is working with parents of children with special needs because I have such a passion for it myself. So throughout, the early stages of my career, had my two children who are both neurodivergent, and I was really surprised at how much I had to pull on my professional background to support my kids. In the midst of all of this, the details of which I'm sure we'll hit later, kind of had that, like, bring you to your knees moment where I was like, "Okay, what I'm doing to support myself isn't working." Like, it was my Target parking lot moment. I had just wrestled my youngest into his car seat during a meltdown that he'd had in Target, and I remember shutting the door, and he's still screaming inside the car, and I could feel my own scream, like, bubbling up in the back of my throat, and I knew in that moment that if I got into the car in that energy, I was not gonna make things better, right? It was not going to help the situation, and I just remember standing in that Target parking lot, like, scream bubbling, tears starting to fall, and thinking, maybe I should figure out how to meditate or something. Like it wasn't part of my practice yet. And at the time, this was about 10 years ago, it was like, if you wanted to learn meditation, it was 6 months, it was thousands of dollars, it was you needed to have an hour a day, and I'm like, I'm looking around and thinking, "That's so far out of the realm of even a dream, let alone possible." But one of the things that I tend to do is when something doesn't exist out into the world, I'm the one that's like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna figure it out, and then I'm gonna tell other people how I did it."
Yay.
So, I started playing around with mindfulness and meditation and developed some of these, like, super practical guerrilla, practices, right? They weren't traditional practices, but they were what worked in the moment. Fast forward to the pandemic when the kids were home, there were no special education services, and we all went online. And I connected with some beautiful somatic healers and spiritual practitioners, and my study in that space really blew up. So I spent from like 2020 until 2024 really just focusing on becoming a Reiki master, writing my first meditation course, studying breath work, getting my coaching certification, like diving back into that. And then coming full circle to going, gosh, the people I really want to help the most are other parents just like me. And how do I, thinking back and going, oh my gosh, over the last 6 years, I have just added in all of these practices into my own life in this really practical, grounded way. This is what I need to share with other people, and this is what I need to do, blended with the negotiation, leadership strategies, the IEP basics for the kids who have need that individualized educational program set up for school. Like because being grounded was what really made a difference in my life and in my success in negotiating for my kids. So,
Yeah, I love that. There's so much there, and I wanna start by going back and to this moment that gave me the chills in your conversation, and that's where when I'm listening to speakers, something that just really resonates with me, I'm like, "We gotta talk about that," right? So,
yes.
let's go back to that moment that you could feel that scream in your own voice. You had
Mhm.
put your child into the car, given yourself a little bit of a break, but imagine that some of the guilt comes from too. Not locked, but I just put my kid in the car and I can't be there for them. And then you're dealing with your own, I need to scream, I need to take care of me. How did you have the wherewithal in that moment? Did this just come to you? Is this something that you paused long enough to allow it? Like, how in that moment of absolute chaos, which we've all found ourselves in, right? Whether we have neurodivergent children or not, especially if we have children, and even more so with children that have, that are neurodivergent or have special challenges, right? We absolutely have find ourselves in those moments. I find myself even as a grandma with some of those moments.
Mhm.
What allowed you in that moment to stop and hear that sound in your throat? Understand that I have a scream
Yeah.
too. I understand how my child's feeling and I feel that way too, but I can't scream.
Yeah. I think that perhaps that was the moment where I recognized that what I had been doing wasn't working, right? Like, I hadn't been embodied. I hadn't been perfect in responding. This wasn't the first meltdown. This was the 11 millionth meltdown, right? And I was at my wit's end, and it was that moment of clarity going, "What I've been doing is not working, and I cannot sustain this like this any longer." And
Yeah.
I tried therapy, was wildly mismatched with the first therapist that I tried. She just had I don't think she had children herself, and so she had no concept of the stress that I was under.
Yeah.
Many special needs parents actually find themselves with complex PTSD diagnoses
Okay.
because of the systemic, sustained hypervigilance that
Yeah.
they find themselves in. And that's exactly where I was at. We couldn't get doctor's appointments. The wait times were over a year long to see a pediatric psychiatrist. One place said, "In 9 months, I'll let you know when you can make your appointment." Not my appointment's in 9 months, but in 9 months, I'll get to make the appointment, for 6 months later. I was just truly at that breaking point, and to have abandoned my cart in Target and getting him out, and if it sounds like you have kids and grandkids,
Yeah.
like, those little people, when they are fully in their primal brain and their thinking brain has gone out the window,
Yeah.
they can be incredibly strong. And like St. Louis summer, I was sweating. It was just all of the things, right? I was hot. I had just wrestled him in. It was truly my breaking point. It was truly my breaking point. And to want to scream in the middle of a busy parking lot was just so last straw
Yeah.
feeling. And the clarity just dropped in, "I gotta do something else."
And I love that you listen to that. Your story so different from mine, but there's a moment where I knew I was dying and I had to do something different. It's that exact same moment I have to do
Yeah,
something different. And for me, I knew the only thing I hadn't done yet was the spiritual path. So what
mhm.
made you think of meditation? Is that the only thing you hadn't tried yet? Had somebody talked to you about it? Like where did that come from? Was it
Oh
innate?
gosh.
Just like this is something that I gotta try? How did
I'm
you
I'm tr I'm trying to remember. I was into personal development already.
Okay.
So the idea of visualization or mindfulness, that was already kind of, doing something for your mind, doing something for your spirit, doing something for your body. That was kind of there. Didn't really have a strong religious or spiritual upbringing or anything. Again, had tried therapy and it just didn't resonate with me. And to me, the answer just seemed I needed something that was from within because I needed it to work in that moment. Not, oh, my next appointment is next Tuesday when I can get in with my therapist to download about this. I needed something where the resource was me
Yeah,
and where it wasn't outsourced to somebody else to help me regulate, to help me through those moments because it was just me and my kid.
yeah,
And whether it was in our home or that Target parking lot, it had to come from within. And so I think that's what made me think, well, let's start with meditation. And that continues to be a cornerstone, whether other people would call what I do, quote, unquote, "meditation" or not. Those moments of pause in my life happen multiple times a day, and it's what gets me through even though I've got one kid who just graduated and another one who's gonna be a sophomore in high school now, so we're past the little kid meltdowns, but the teenage years aren't without stress. So
no, they're
I
not.
s I s I still get a lot of practice.
Yeah, it's a different kind of stress, but it's definitely stressful. I'm so excited that you said something that I think is a conversation that's not discussed enough. What I heard you saying just now is that pivotal moment came from, "I have to do something within me, not outside of me." It took me a long time to figure that out, but once I did, everything started changing. So
Mhm,
we as a, community, as a world, like as human beings living this every day, trying to get through life, most of us living in fight and flight, right? Like just trying to
mhm.
protect ourselves from past stuff that we haven't dealt with. We're in this constant state of vigilance that you're talking about. And then you have situations like this that just escalate it even more. And we do tend as humans to seek outside resources for those, to give us that relief. And it's
Yeah.
understandable. I did it for over 34 years, right? You did it
Yeah.
as long as you could until you had that moment. I hear that you were just like, it's time. I gotta look within. I gotta know what I can do within. And it sounds like you dove into it, right? You did Reiki, you
Yeah.
started really jumping into learning what that meant. And so I'd
Yeah.
like you to just speak a little bit about that because I think that's where the power is, and that's the missing piece for so many of us, is that
Yeah.
we still seek all our answers outside of us, and the truth is that our body has innate ability to heal, our body knows what we need. You stopped and paused even for seconds and listened long enough to know that you were being called to come inside
Yeah.
within yourself for the answers, right? So let's talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that journey because as I mentioned before we got on this call, you're very grounded in
Mm.
the scientific world, right? Having this background of being in the Navy. I can imagine that
Air Force.
Air
Yeah.
Force. Oh,
Air Force.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Okay, yes,
That's okay.
thank you. Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah.
So having this background of being in the Air Force and, having a very analytical job, right? And then you
Yes.
suddenly start going, oh, wait, answers aren't in all the spreadsheets and all the answers anymore outside of me. Answers start to come from within me. How long, like, did it take you? Because this is important because we think, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to do this. This is so much. How can I change my life?
Yeah.
So, what was that process for you in terms of really getting not just a hint that it's coming from inside, but really understanding that my power, my joy, and beyond joy, just getting through those harder times comes more from within. And let's talk a
Oh,
little bit about the practice of
yeah.
not getting it right? Because you're not going to always get it right, and we still don't always get it right. That's because 'cause we're humans and
Absolutely.
that's normal, but how was that for you, and at what point did you realize, "I really have the answer here"?
Do I feel like I really have the answers? I don't know. I'm a lifelong learner, and so I always know the more you know, the more you realize that you don't know. So, I will never be done studying. My bookshelves are full of all of the books that I want to read and learn from. So I think it certainly took me years to build some confidence
Okay.
in it because when I first began 10 years ago with that Target parking lot moment, again, it was not linear, right? Progress is not linear. Progress is more like a spiral staircase. You're
Yeah,
going to see the same issues. You're just slightly you're one floor up, right? But you still have the same view. You just have a slightly different perspective. So I still screw up. I still
yeah,
find myself outsourcing an uncomfortable feeling to scrolling my phone or doing those types of things.
yeah,
I think the lifelong practice is to remember who we are, to remember our power, and to find those moments where and more add more moments where I can weave it into my daily practices. I think
yeah,
people what stops us from doing it, Cindy, is this idea that we have to be perfect
yeah,
and this idea that there are rules and that it is this ritual that we need to practice when we come to the idea of self-care or listening to ourselves or what have you. If we just give ourselves 30 seconds of space, 2 minutes of space that we aren't filling with a podcast in our ears. No shade to podcasts,
no,
obviously.
you're right.
But without, filling it with constant input, if you can give yourself just a little bit of space,
Yeah,
and whether that's while your kettle boils for your tea or your Keurig spits out your coffee in the morning, if you just take these micro moments for intentionality and checking in with yourself throughout the day, it's it's like the metaphor of a pilot who starts off going from LA to New York City, and his trajectory is off by 2 degrees, and he ends up in DC instead of New York, right? Just
yep,
because he was off just a little bit. So these little micro adjustments throughout the day and throughout billing it throughout your week actually add up and make a large change. I love a juicy week-long retreat. Love an hour-long yoga practice with 30 minutes of meditation after that. If you've got time in your schedule for that, blessings, enjoy.
Yeah.
But if the only time I have between feeding the dog and getting the kids up for school is the 3 minutes it takes my kettle to boil, if I can take that moment, those 3.5 minutes,
Yeah.
listening to one song on the driveway before you transition from work into being at home, just that little bit makes such a huge difference.
Yep.
And I think making things just as wildly practical as possible and letting go of any rules or 5 steps that you have to follow, I think that's what's allowed me to meld my spiritual practices in with my practical life and make it fit in the schedule and the society and the community that I have to live within.
Yeah, and I think that what you just said is the key to longevity with any practice we take in, right? Any new
Mhm.
practice that we're taking on or we're trying, it's about little practices, little steps at a time, not I have a finish line. And I want to go back
Yeah.
because you had said, I don't think I have all the answers. And I didn't speak my question properly because I agree that that we're always learning and we always will be, and we don't have all the answers. However, I strongly believe that our body has the answers and
Mm.
our body. And so that was the trigger that I was looking for. Like you switched from, okay, I'm looking and
Yeah.
seeing all my answers outside of me to my body knows what I need. And
Yeah.
you started to listen to that and listen to what it
Yeah.
had to say and implement little steps at a time of, I call it a purposeful pause, pausing to stop for
Mhm.
a moment and say, what do I need right now? What am my body telling me? What am I hearing? And, what am I saying or thinking or feeling
Yes.
there? And you've learned to actually implement that practice into your everyday life like a regular part of your life.
Yeah.
That's the key. It's
Yeah.
become
And
part of your life, is what it sounds like to me.
yeah, it really has. And that intentional pause, that checking in with yourself of what do I need today?
Yeah.
And trusting that answer, that's the work. That's the work. And trusting that what the first answer that comes through is the right answer
Yeah.
because your spirit will speak, your body slash spirit will speak first, and then your mind gets involved. And it's like, you don't need rest. You just laid in bed for, 8 hours.
Right?
But did you actually rest? Right? Did you actually rest? If your body says, I need more rest today instead of a 2-mile run, listen
Yeah.
and don't, let your ego talk you out of it. And, that I think that building trust with what your body is telling you and believing it and honoring it, it also helps to just remember that just because you have 10 different practices in your arsenal, you don't have to do all 10 of those every day. Check in with your body and say, what would feel good? Would a juicy yoga flow feel good? Do I need to do I need to flow and slowly move my body, or do I need to, like, put on some hip shaking music and move my body? Do I need the run, or do I need to sit in stillness?
Yes.
And knowing that self-care and listening to your body is going to look different every day because it's not about getting all of the practices into every day. It's about giving your body the practice that it needs today,
Yes. Ooh, I
right?
love that. Absolutely. And that's about living in the moment, right? That's when we're really, we hear all the time, stay in the moment, stay in the moment. And it's not easy to do. But those little
Mm,
practices are what bring us back to the moment, right? And
yeah.
so you're giving yourself such a gift. And we're going to jump into, the work that you're doing in caregiving and your book in just a minute because what this conversation I think is so incredibly powerful for everybody, not alone people that are caregiving for others. And taking care of yourself and learning to do those little tiny steps just really super important. And I when I
Yeah.
was looking at your website, I noticed a lot about how you really talk about just incorporating it as if it's just part of you, right? Just
Yeah.
embodying this practice of listening and feeling what your body needs at any given time, which is truly the biggest blessing I think you could give yourself and any one of us could give
Absolutely.
ourselves for sure.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
want to say this, I don't want to jump into this conversation because it could take up a whole episode in itself, but I will say this morning, just this morning, I made a decision to get off of Facebook off my phone. And what's
Mm.
very powerful about that is the nervous system shift that I felt. I actually went through a little release because I
Mm.
felt the addiction to, is
Mhm.
there somebody reaching out to me? Do I need to answer their questions? Right? I just had noticed lately that I wasn't detaching enough from my phone since I
Yeah.
started this podcast. And so I took it off my phone. And the why I want to talk about this just briefly is because you mentioned that every little thing we do can help shift us back into, a place of peace. And
Yeah.
I was in this space of already waking up and instantly thinking about who might have posted, who might have, my brain went right to it. So I made the
Yeah.
decision. I'm like, I'm taking it off my phone. And it took about a half an hour of my whole body adjusting to that change, which is
Yeah.
really surprising to me. It really shook me a little bit that I actually was that attached to my phone that take or to Facebook that taking it off, made that. So
Yeah.
just a little
I
side note.
I kudos. I do enjoy social media, and so
Yeah.
but I have kind of a strict rule where I will not go on social media until lunchtime. So, in the morning, I try to be a creator, not a consumer, and try to either
For you.
work on my book or, whatever I need to create for my business, and then at lunchtime, I get to scroll mindlessly a little bit, but from then on, I will struggle some days with,
Putting it down.
th
Yeah.
yeah, with putting it down and like, "Oh, I don't wanna this copy isn't coming really easily," or, "I don't wanna write that email back to whoever that is," and,
Yes.
the phone's right there, and you pick it up and you're in it so fast, so,
Yes.
um,
And the agreement I made
yeah.
with myself is I still will look at Facebook, but when I'm working, so that it's work, not
Mm,
scrolling. But I do want to
mhm.
say you give yourself the limits already. So you have found what works for you. And when you
Yeah,
find that it's not, so I had balanced I had pretty good limitations to it until I started this podcast. And then I just found myself really listening to other
yeah,
podcasts. Because even listening to other podcasts is still noise in your ear, just like you said. I'm not saying don't listen to podcasts. I'm so happy that you're listening to mine right now and
yeah,
you're here interviewing with me right now, but the reality is we do need to step away from all that noise sometimes and just
yeah,
be. And when we're listening
yeah,
to something, whether it's scrolling through, just for fun, or we're just taking 10 minutes to just separate ourselves, whatever the reason is, that's all good and balance. But I found myself out of balance and I made that choice. You've figured out your rules on how, like, what works for you to make that choice to keep that balance for yourself too. And that's what's important. We can't all do everything, cut everything out or make, be perfect. Just like you said, nobody's
nope,
perfect. So
that's not the goal.
let's dive into your work with caregivers because I have
Yes,
a real special place in my heart for this conversation. I am right now helping to caretake for my mother-in-law. Now she's in a home, but she's close to our house and there's still a lot of support and love and attention that she needs that wasn't there before, before my father-in-law passed away and she needed to be put in this home. It's hard. It's sad. It's emotional. It's like I could start crying right now, like, and I don't, and that they're not in my home. A lot of people that are caregiving with someone right in their own home, with their own kids, with, the sandwich generation, like you mentioned earlier. So share a little bit about the work you do and how, I guess maybe some of the biggest messages that you have or some messages you want to share for caregivers and people that are in that position right now.
yeah, you know one of the, best pieces of advice because I'm in a similar situation. 3 years ago, my, mother moved across the state to be closer to me. I'm the oldest, and, oldest daughters tend to get the brunt of things still, at least when in our generation.
Yeah.
But with 3 years ago, she within 6 months, she had a stroke and then a heart attack.
Oh, wow.
And so she went from being fully independent to not. And I was still had my 2 kids with their IEPs and all of their challenges, and, so I found myself truly in this position where if I let it, carrying up and down in that generational chain could have absolutely destroyed my own health.
Yeah.
And one of my friends who found herself in a somewhat similar situation said, especially with our parents and caring, for them as they age, that we truly cannot make them healthier,
Yeah.
but if we let it, they will negatively impact caring for them will negatively impact our own health.
It's a good
And so you can provide care and support, but your responsibility has to be caring and supporting yourself first
Yeah.
so that then you can care and support other people, but your energy is yours first. So
Yeah.
the philosophy that I try to live by, it's a practice for the last year or so. I've really doubled down on it is I don't pour from my cup at all. I fill my cup so that it overflows, and the overflow is what I use to serve others. The overflow is what I use to serve my kids. The overflow, what falls into that saucer, is what is used to support others. And I hope that it overflows and runs over, and I have so much energy, but my energy is mine first. My energy, it does not belong to my children first. My energy does not belong to my mother first. My energy is mine, and my body, my mind, and my spirit get to be on my priority list. And if they're not, that's when you are chronically ill. That's when your body starts to break down because your body is going to ask for breaks until it has to demand a break, right?
Yep.
Your body will get your attention one way or the other. And
100%.
so the work is to serve yourself first, and it is not selfish. That is what society wants us to think
Yes.
because then we're tired and we can't fight not only for our family, but out and, fight for our community and support others in our community if we're tired and if we're burned out. So it is an act of resistance. It is an act of self-love, and it is actually the best thing that you can do to support your loved ones, whether they're older than you or your own children, is to care for yourself, and whether that means making sure that you're eating your vegetables, you're moving your body for just a couple of minutes, you truly have to listen to your body and your needs
Yeah.
because if you go into a negotiation and you are stressed, your nervous system is dysregulated, so you're walking in there upset and not grounded, you're hungry, didn't sleep well, all of these things, how do you think you're gonna negotiate with the school
Yeah.
just even ask for what your child needs without bursting into tears. Ask me how I know how that can go badly, right? Because I wasn't always where I am now 10 years into my, into this work. And same thing with my mom. I remember that at that 6-month mark when she had her heart attack, I got the phone call, I was driving up to the hospital, going to the ICU, and I just remember, again, that feeling of emotions overwhelming me as I was driving, and I was in the car by myself, and I was further on in my practices, right? So I was already my Reiki master. I was studying breath work at the time. I had tools in my tool belt, and I just remember giving myself permission as on the drive to just say, "I'm mad. I'm pissed that this is happening. We just got her back onto, footing after the stroke, and now she's having this heart attack, and I'm sad because this isn't what I wanted, for to finally live in the same city as my mom, again after 15 years of living all over the country, and I'm scared, and I'm tired, and I'm just over it, and I'm worried, and I out loud, I let myself say and acknowledge all of these emotions instead of, like, bottling them up. And what I found that it did was I pulled into my parking spot, and I just sat there for a moment, and I just put my, hand on my stomach and a hand on my heart, and I just let it say, "Yep, all of those feelings exist, and none of this is awesome." And I gave myself 2 extra minutes in the parking lot to just breathe and recenter myself so that I didn't walk in to the ICU pissed and
Right.
sad and scared and all those things. I walked in, I was able to support her, I was able to work with the medical professionals, I was able to figure out, what she was going to need when she went home. I was able to do those practical things because I had cared for me first, and I took 2 minutes. I ranted on the 10-minute car drive over to the hospital and then gave myself 2 minutes to recenter myself, and I was a better caregiver, I was a better daughter, I was a better person
Yeah.
because I honored myself and what I was feeling and my needs first. And I think if we can remember that as caregivers, that of course there are moments, especially with little ones, where you have to deal with what's right in front of you,
Yeah.
but I have sat down in the middle of the kitchen floor with the kids in the middle of the pile of Legos. You can still take 2 deep breaths, and that's all it takes to start to settle your nervous system and snap you out of that fight or flight response and to signal to my body, "I am safe and I am capable and I can handle this."
That's so beautiful. I think what you just shared with my audience is incredibly powerful because what you allowed yourself to do was feel and acknowledge those emotions. And our emotions only want to be acknowledged. I used to I shoved them down for years and didn't feel them at all, which is why I ended up
Oh,
almost
yeah.
dying, right? And now I can process them in minutes, sometimes seconds, by acknowledging it just like you did. You didn't deny it. You didn't swallow it and say, "Can't feel this right now." Alright, like so many of
And
us, like,
it
take a
was messy.
yeah,
Yeah, it's messy, like, none of those were fun emotions. It doesn't f it didn't feel like I was being a good daughter to say, "I'm pissed. I'm
yeah,
pissed that she didn't take care of her health. I'm pissed that she, you know, swallowed her own emotions for decades as
mm,
a good boomer, daughter was taught to do and gave herself, her own autoimmune diseases, but she's
yeah,
not willing to do the spiritual work and actually, like, turn around and look at herself and, and do that work, and yeah, I hate it. I'm so mad sometimes. It's
yeah.
not a fun emotion. That feels icky to say that I'm mad at my mom for being sick, but it's honest,
It's real.
and but I it's
It's real.
real, it's honest, and I love her, and I'm
Yeah.
going to show up for her. I can hold space for both of those feelings,
Yes.
right? I hate the drain on my time and energy and that I got the phone call and I had to reschedule my clients and I had to, do all these things. Like, I was irritated, but also I was going to show up for my mom and love on her and know that it wasn't her fault, but I was still mad.
Yes.
And I had to hold space for both of those, and
And
I
is
think we
so
don't give
important.
ourselves permission.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the "and." I'm a big "and," not "but," because, so many things can be true at once. You could have multiple truths
Hmm.
happening all at one time. What we do is
100%.
we guilt ourselves. I shouldn't feel that way. I shouldn't think that way. And so we shame ourselves or guilt ourselves, right? I see
Yep.
this in so many individuals instead of being like you, like, yeah, that doesn't feel good to say that, but that's my truth right now. I'm pissed off at her right now. I'm not very
Yep.
happy and I love her. And I'm going to go in there. I'm going to hug her up and I'm going to help her get through this. And yeah, I'm a little irritated that I have to do all this because I've got a busy house. And all of that is so real, and you allowed
Yep.
yourself to feel that realness, and when we don't allow ourselves, we shove it in, we deny it, and then it manifests as something, deeper and bigger. So,
Well,
I think
and
that's
then you
a
feel
powerful.
it for even longer.
Yeah,
Like you said, you can process an emotion in seconds, if not, minutes. And
yeah,
so, yeah, I felt all that stuff, and then I was like, "Okay,
yeah,
here we go.
yeah,
Let's what's the next thing that needs to happen? All right." But I could do it from a grounded point, a grounded part of me,
yeah,
and bring that embodied, grounded person to the forefront. Like, there was still a temper tantrum happening, over the shoulder,
yeah,
and there was I was able to bring the right part of me forward to show up and, be that embodied support person that she needed, whether or that my kids needs in that moment.
yeah.
And
Because you
because I let
gave
myself feel it for minutes. Yeah.
exactly, that's what I was gonna say, because you gave yourself 2 minutes. I so
Yeah.
often hear, "I don't have time. I don't have time to change my life. I don't have time to add," like you said, love the vacations, the retreats, pedicures, manicures,
Yeah.
all of that takes a lot of time and money. But in reality, all of this and what you're saying, the practical stuff is the power behind
Yeah.
change. Real quick, and
Every
then I'm going to ask
time
you to
it
share your book.
oh,
I do want to address one
okay.
thing because I hear this a lot, and you said it too, and I want to bring this up. It's taken you 10 years to get as good as you are. So, what do you just
Mhm.
say to somebody that's just like, I don't have 10 years. I'm exhausted now. I'm I can't wait that long because it took me years and years to get as good as I am at connecting with my body too. What do you
Yeah.
say to someone just starting off that's just overwhelmed, exhausted, and has no wherewithal to the understanding of how powerful these 2 little minutes, and I don't wanna
Yeah.
diminish 2 minutes because that could feel like a lot in someone's life, but how adding these 2 minutes and these pauses into your life, how
Yeah.
powerful that could be for them early on, and then they'll
Yeah.
get better and better and grow more and more.
Yeah, so the very first practice that I teach, whether it's in my meditation in moments course or in the book, a third of the book is dedicated towards these in the moment practices that you can use. I also have a workshop that's called Survival in Self Care Mode, or self care when you're in survival mode. There we go. Because self care has to look different depending on where you are in that survival mode continuum, right? Are you in the crisis? Are you just after the crisis? Or are you in that, like, long-term systemic, "Okay, life has changed, and now we have to figure out what life looks like." But the very first practice that I like to teach, I call it a micro meditation or a stoplight meditation because it's so fast, you can do it at a stoplight, and it is simply taking 2 deep breaths. The key is to make your exhale just a little bit longer than your inhale. So, you're gonna breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. One more time. Out through your mouth. Now notice saw your shoulders drop.
Yeah.
Do you feel just a
Oh, yeah.
little bit more settled?
Yes.
That's so fast that you can do it mid-conversation. It doesn't have to be that obvious, right? You can just take a breath in, you can even let it out through your nose, but if you pair it with something that you do a lot during the day, and so that's why I say a stoplight or a stop sign if you're running carpool or whatever. If you work from home and you're still in your house, I say every time you pee, every time you go to the bathroom, because you're right now, I would bet that for 95% of us, it's you take your phone with you into the bathroom and you sit down, and even if you're just peeing, you're opening up something on your phone, you're just gonna check something real quick, you're whatever. What
Yeah.
if you took the first 2 breaths when you sat down to go to the bathroom and just took 2 deep intentional breaths?
Yeah.
Everybody has time for that, and you do it multiple times a day. Even if you only peed 4 times today, that would be 4 intentional moments of coming back to your body, your breath, and recentering yourself and checking in, noticing how you feel before, noticing how you feel after. 15 seconds. And that's where we start. And that's where we start building that muscle and adding it in. It's one of the best practices in adopting a new habit. It's called habit stacking. So take a habit that you already have and add the thing that you're trying to bring in to it. So if it's meditation and you have an existing workout routine where you exercise every day, add your 5 to 10 minutes of meditation to the end of your workout. If you walk your dog every morning, add 5 minutes of meditation after you bring the dog back home, or use it as a moving meditation and find either a guided meditation or just some music that really, lifts you up when you're walking your dog, when you're driving carpool, when you're doing these daily things, and that's when we weave it into the fabric of what you do so that it's not this extra thing that you have to make time for. It's just part of how you move
Right.
throughout your life. And it can be that simple. Taking 2 deep breaths multiple times a day gives you that degree shift so that you stay aligned with who you are and how you wanna move through the world and through your day.
I love that. What a beautiful message. As you continue to do that, you'll get to know and connect with your body more and more. But in the beginning, especially when we're so disconnected, those breaths can make huge shifts in how we feel joy and peace throughout the day. So what a beautiful way to describe it. I love stack the habit stacking.
Habit
That's
stacking.
really
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah.
And and I do wanna say too, a lot of people start with meditation, but if you have anxiety, if you are neurodivergent yourself, meditation might not be the best entry point for someone. And so
Right.
one of my favorite things, to work with clients is to see what works. And I have, kind of a handful of these little micro practices and okay, like that doesn't work for you. At least know about it and you can try it, but let's try something else. And the other thing too is with taking those 2 deep breaths, making your exhale a little bit longer. Even just that, if someone has high anxiety, could trigger their anxiety, just know that you are changing your physiological state by changing how you breathe. And so initially, it may feel a little dysregulating, but if you can gain some trust with it, then it becomes a safer practice. But I did have a client who she was like, taking 2 deep breaths makes my heart race even more like
Yeah.
that, like even just doing that. And so we had to, take a step back and really work with her body and her nervous system. So just trust that wherever you are, you can start from where you are and make it simple.
That's a great message. I think it's so important because we're all so different. And for me, walking is a meditative state because I don't have my phone on and right. So there's
Mhm.
so many different things that we can do, but how you start and how you listen to your nervous system. And sometimes it's okay to just like this morning, that half hour after I got off Facebook was weird. And it felt
Yeah.
like I was going into like a anxiety attack almost. But it was just my
Mhm.
nervous system going, what is this shift? What are you doing? It was like a
Yeah.
withdrawal from my nervous system, and so then
Yeah.
after I
Yeah.
went for a walk, and I was able to calm myself down, so thank you so much. That's really,
Yeah.
really great information. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your book and how what you do and how my listeners can reach you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, my first book was just published. It's called Lanterns in the Dark, a holistic guide to navigating special education without losing your sanity. So there are 3 main pillars in the book. Obviously, it is focused on for parents who have children who need some sort of special education services. But the 3 main parts in the book is how to care for yourself, that you have to be the stable foundation for which all advocacy builds off of. So you have to be regulated. How do we get you? How do we get your spouse on board? Your co-parent on board? Circling up your community, but caring for yourself and building your foundation. Then it does dive into what that individualized education program process looks like. What does it look like for parents to request services and get those services? But then we go into these essential skills that I pulled from my background, and I tried to distill them down into some Rebbe's rules for negotiation, Rebbe's rules for leadership, but it's really teaching leadership, negotiation, and communication skills so that you can be a more effective advocate for your child. And that's the main work that I do in my coaching practice is helping parents become a better advocate for their child. I am not a capital A advocate. That is actually a legal term that there are people who are officially advocates who will go in to the schools and sit in the
Right.
meeting with you and help advocate for your child. That is not my work. I am don't while I do have contracts background and negotiation background, I don't have the legal background to really know the law in and out. What I know is what it feels like to be a caregiver and to walk this path and to have to be a grounded leader for and an advocate for your child. Because
Okay.
what parents don't realize at the beginning is every year you get potentially a completely new team supporting your child, and the parent is the only member of that team that stays consistent throughout the school years. So the parent is the only real continuity that is there. And while the parent doesn't author the document, the parent's input is equally as important as the school's input, as the teacher's input. And so if you go in passively, resources are constrained. They're not supposed to be, but they are. And so if you go in passively, your child is not going to potentially get everything that they truly would qualify for, should get. It's not how the law is written, but that's the reality on the ground is that resources are constrained and that you are having to fight for your piece of that pie or your child's piece of that pie. So the work that I do is the through the book is to teach all of these skills, try and present it as this roadmap of care for yourself, understand the process. Here are the skills that were really helpful for me to be successful. And then in my private practice working with clients, it's really customizing that program for an individual parent and their child's situation, giving them advice on how to approach it, but first and foremost, starting with helping them be that stable foundation so that they can embody that like grounded leadership so that they aren't in tears or screaming in anger or firing off the angry email when something inevitably goes sideways, right? It's that stop, pause, reflect, see if this is actually going to stop the scream before it hits somebody else, deal with it in your own system so
Yeah.
that then you can be an effective advocate for your kiddo.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited about the work you do. I know many
Thank you.
friends and family members even that really struggle with this. And I think your book is a really needed resource right now. So I'm excited to share it. And how can my
Thank you so
listeners
much.
find you? We're going to put it all in the show
Yeah,
notes, but tell us how they can find you.
perfect. Yeah, so I am Rebe Goebel at all on all platforms. So the name spelling of the last name is has an extra vowel in there, but it's just RebeGoebel.com. And then on Instagram, I am on TikTok. I have kind of the same feelings about Facebook that you have, that you have about Facebook that I
Okay.
have about TikTok. So it's,
Okay.
I don't know. Anyways, that's a whole other conversation. But Instagram is where I hang out. That's my happy place. And so there you can find information about upcoming workshops that I might have, some group coaching that will be happening in the fall. I also have a free download. So, in case any of your listeners do have children with special education and an IEP, this template is really great, especially when they are younger. It would actually work this summer for camps, depending on when you're listening to this podcast. But it's a new school year introduction guide. So it's a a way for you to provide a Cliff Notes version of your kid quickly to the new team. IEPs can be 20, 30, 40 pages long. They are very standardized. It's got some legal jargon in there, those types of things. This is a template that listeners can download for free from my website and then distill what works, what your child's strengths are, what their challenges are into those real practical day-to-day things like, hey, they hate stickers. Don't put stickers on their paper. An orange smiley face is going to be perfect. Just use your highlighter, right? Like we have a sensory thing with stickers. Don't put stickers on their paper. That was my little guy. But this is a quick like 2, 3 page template, and then it's a really beautiful resource for the teachers to leave for substitutes or to give to the gym teacher or the art teacher. So, that is
Perfect.
available, like I said, for free to download from my website, which is that rebegoebel.com. And, I did give you a specific link if you wanna add that into the show notes as well. So that
I will. I'll definitely add it into the show links,
perfect.
and you can, find Rebby and look her up, and if you need help, sounds like you're a really great resource, and I'm so grateful to have you on this
Yeah,
podcast.
absolutely. It was a pleasure. Thanks, Cindy.